This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you, not from the Brooklyn Bunker, not from the Brooklyn Salon, but from a random hotel room in Las Vegas. I am joined today, as ever, by the People's Champion. He is Jonathan Kinchin. JK, how are you today?
I'm in a random hotel room, too, and probably the same building. I'm on the 35th floor. Where are you at?
Up the 35th floor. Once again, we talked about it last week. He's going to the Super Bowl. He's taking his private jet with models. Who's got it better than this guy? Fancy there up in a penthouse suite, apparently, while I'm down here with the plebeians on the 8th floor.
No, it's a normal room. I promise. It's nothing special. It's just higher than yours.
Well, that is something that perhaps you'll be kind enough to let me come and check out the view over Las Vegas out here. Not really in a full official DRF capacity for the world look at that slip, for the National Horse Players Championship, but out here sort of liaising with players in the wake of the World Championship of Handicapping, while this other big tournament goes on out here. Great chance for me to do some one-stop shopping with players, and for folks who are interested in that other event, our friend Steve Bick will be putting special coverage of it that you can find on stevebick.com, and I'll be joining him for a lot of that. We'll be talking a lot about last weekend's WCH, looking to get people like Frank Polk, our winner, to come over and talk to us for a little while. And speaking of Frank Polk, we're going to take a few minutes out, take a little detour early in the show today, and play a little conversation I had with Frank from just a few days ago. Here that is. Welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. Frank Polk, the first ever World Championship of Handicapping winner. Frank, you've had a few days for it to settle in now. Does it seem real yet?
Not yet. And it's not, because I don't think it's official yet. They're still monitoring the accounts, and they have to send me an affidavit to swear that I didn't cheat or anything. So.
I'm going to imagine you come out clear on that one. One great thing about this tournament, unlike other tournaments, is they're all, because it's online, they're using an online format, all the picks are vetted in real time. So you sort of crowdsource the audit. And I have a feeling I'd be the first one someone might come to if there was any doubt. So I think it's only a matter of time before that $138,750 check is on its way to you. Tell us about the tournament, Frank, and how it all went down, starting with how your first day went. We didn't really talk about that the other night.
The first day, it probably shouldn't make any difference, but I like to. I always feel a bit better if I get a decent start, and I think I had a hit in the third or fourth race. And once I've done that, I feel a lot better. So I think Krampus was maybe my first. And, the goal was just to make the cut, right? I mean, it certainly would be nice to be in the lead, but I had that horse and no great hits that day. I guess another horse called Sudden Impact or something like that at Oaklawn, which I normally don't do any well at all at Oaklawn. And the big race for me that day was Santa Anita Fifth, the number 4, the Lomba horse, something like that. He just ran away from everybody and paid in the 20s, I think. So at that point, I felt like, well, I've made the cut, so all's good. And I don't know. Need to get up the leaderboard to see if there was anything else exciting, but nothing else too exciting, really.
The day started with 111 entries, many of whom qualified in through the DRF tournament's website. Other people like you put up the money. We'll talk about that in a minute. Of those 111, 56 continued today too. Do you remember approximately where you were at the start of the day?
I think I was somewhere around 17th at the start of day 2. And and then there was another cut right to the top 26. So I felt pretty good about that. And then immediately, and I guess I hit the first 2 races maybe just to place, just to collect. And then I pretty much goose-egged the rest of the second segment of the tournament. And I thought I wasn't going to make the cut. I mean, I thought I was done. I thought that was just the breaks. But I came in at like 24th out of 26, something like that. It was pretty discouraging, but a relief to at least made it to the finals.
How did you get your head back on straight? You had that rapid fire second round, and then there was about a half an hour before the final round started. I believe it was 28 entries that went on. Was there any adjustment that you made in terms of strategy or mentally to get back on track?
Not really. I mean, I felt it was weird because even throughout the first day and then this first segment of the second day, you know, my picks were running fairly well. I was getting a lot of third places, it seemed like, or, you know, they were competitive, and it felt like the horses that I was going with were live, and or sometimes more likely I had debated between 2 horses, and of course the horse I didn't pick won the race or something, but still to me that's a positive sign. So that's how horse players have to think. And so I didn't really have to adjust much. I was really busy because I was doing this tournament and I was trying to be the last qualifier for the National Handicapping Championship. And so I had a tournament going there too that I had been more successful in my picks. And so I was at the top 5 to 10 of that tournament, most of that tournament. So I was busy, and I thought I was doing all right, even though my spot in the tournament wasn't ideal.
Well, once you got to that final round, those jets came back on, and it was rapid fire. It was just within a couple minutes, if I recall correctly. Let's talk again about the races that got you to the top.
The finals, you know, the first 2 races didn't do much for me. But I thought there was a really good horse, a really possibly good hit in the third race of the finals, the Santa Anita 7th. And, of course, I really liked the horse that was the odds were too low. The Mischievous Last, number 9, it was 2-1, a little over almost 5-2. And that wasn't going to help me in the tournament since I was probably in last place after the first 2 races, would be my guess. But I really liked Tabitha Bonita. That was fairly high with my numbers, had been competitive with similar horses, had just run and led a mile race all the way to the stretch, and then finally faded. You know, had run against this Mischievous Last that I liked in this last race. So just beaten, Mischievous Last was second by 4.5 lengths, and Tabitha was fourth by 5 1/4. So the 2-1 horse beat the horse I liked by a length. And my horse was going off, Tabitha was going off at almost 12-1. So I, you know, had speed in a race that really didn't have anybody else dominating the speed. So I went with Tabitha, and she ran a great race, either first or second all the way around, and then held on and pulled away really in the stretch. So that was what got me closer. And shortly after that, actually just a couple minutes later, was the Gulfstream 11th race that, so I didn't have much time to celebrate Tabitha's victory because the GP11 was, you know, that's where I got the Max horse, Shoshone Brave. And I've actually had a couple of people contact me and say, how the hell did you get that horse? And
do tell.
You know, when I, huh?
Do tell.
It's a secret.
No, you can't do that to us.
It's proprietary. You know, I like the Zip Man from a prior race, and it had run with Shoshone Brave in its last race. And I just started looking at these horses, and in all my numbers, they were all fairly equal. Nobody was a standout, except you had lots of horses at low to medium-sized odds, and then you had Shoshone Brave at 31-1. So, you know, that's in tournament. You need to look closely at that. And again, I like Zip Zip Man. He was 6-1 on the morning line, and was around there most of the time. Finally, drifted up a little bit. I like Shadow Rock and a couple of these others. They just all look interchangeable to me. It looked like none of these was a winner really. And you look at Shoshone Brave. Again, ran as a tandem with Zip Zip Man. Ran a decent race. Was steady twice. So. Ran like a quarter of a length, half length behind Zip Zip Man in a race that it was steady twice in a 5 furlong turf race. So really ran through that, was able to overcome it. And then you look, another race back at 5 furlongs, ran third by length, another race back, 5 furlongs, won the race. He had run 3 times at Gulfstream, won one of them, 5 times this distance, won 2 of them. So, I mean, that's a competitive horse, and the numbers were equal, except that, and this is the only time, I probably spot this several times a year and it never works. But if you look at Zip Zip Man, at least on my numbers, and Shadow Rock, and the 2 of the other horses, so 4 of the horses had a huge number, 2 or 3 races back that all would dominate the race. But if you look at it, they all came from two days, December 2nd and December 3rd. At Gulfstream in a 5 furlong race. So either my numbers were wrong or the variant was off or whatever, but I just threw those races out. And when I threw those races out, everybody was equal, and everybody being equal, I'd take the 30-1 horse. And, kind of, it's one of those deals where then you got to get him to run. And this one ran second the whole way through and then just pulled away by a nose at the end and paid $64. So that was, that combined with the Tabitha race, a few minutes before, it was, about the best 5 minutes I've had in handicapping. So, and but I still assumed I would be, in the top 10. But I assumed other people would have those horses, and I think a lot of them had the Tabitha horse, but I'm not sure anybody had Shoshone Brave.
You were the only one. You were the only one.
Yeah, cool. That's why you're talking to me. That's how you win these tournaments with a max horse.
Did you refer to your own?
Huh?
You go ahead, Frank.
No, so after that, I checked. And I thought I'd be in the top 10, but I didn't think I'd be in the lead. And I was either first or second after those races. And I was, and I was kind of so intensively interested in this Shoshone race that I almost missed the next race, and I barely got my pick in for that, but it wasn't a very good pick. And then barely got my pick in for the next race. That was a winning race, Alert Kitten, at low odds. And at that point, when I'm in the lead, the question is, do you try to defend it with low odds horses or go with higher odds horses? And normally, I'll go with lower medium odds horses that have a good chance to win. So. And every race in the next 2 races, the Gulfstream 12th, I figured somebody would. I had to win it. That was good. I figured somebody would win Sanity 8th and take first. Nobody passed me. Then I had the winner, and then Oaklawn 9th. I debated between the number 2 horse and the 1-1A entry, and of course I picked the 2 horse that then faded in the 1-1A entry. May have finished 1-2. And so at that point, because that was, to me, that was an obvious pick between 2 horses, and I assumed that some of the competitive people in the top 4 or 5 would have that and would pass me, but nobody did. I mean, nobody passed me. And then it's the standard, huh?
As it turned out, at that point, you had enough points that you would have hung on, but you still managed to get a few more in the last race of the contest.
Yeah, and it's kind of typical. I debated between the 5 and the 6 in that last race, and wound up taking the 5 horse, and it, of course, lost to the 6 horse. And the 6 paid enough and was obvious enough. It was a $19 horse that, again, I just thought, well, I finished second or third, but I'd be happy with the payoff. It was a great tournament for me, and I couldn't believe it. I checked the results, and my horse finished second, paid $640. I think that may have pushed me over the line, but I went up first. It was fantastic because I was at home, I was comfortable, I was relaxed, and periodically I'd tell my wife, "Hey, I'm doing pretty well in this tournament." She's like, "Right, sure."
You'd mentioned it had been a rough year in a lot of ways, so maybe she was going to believe it when she saw it at that point.
Yeah, and she actually, since I had supplemented myself into the tournament, we hadn't discussed that in advance. Normally that would be a discussion in advance to make sure that was a wise use of income. But since I knew it wasn't a wise use of income, I went ahead and did it. So she didn't realize what was at stake or the possibility of winning. And, anytime you get in these tournaments, there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. And it's rare to take first. And so I held back on specific news until I had some specific news, and it was really good news.
Well received, I would presume.
Yeah, exactly.
You referred to your numbers, Frank. Are you a speed figure maker yourself? No. I was inspired by Andy Byers, but in his first book, but just the program that I use was referring to that really. Gotcha. You can say what it is. We can give out a quick plug here. I probably won't put it in the article, but just for the podcast listeners.
Okay. Well, this is so I use Mike Pizzola's Value Capper, the new program he came out with a few months ago. So, yeah, I've had a little bit of time adjusting to it. It's similar to his original program, but different. And I ultimately now I'm a big fan of it. So. So normally the numbers that I'm looking at and referring to are those, and I'm using another program, the Optics EQ, for a lot of my pace analysis, which is probably too much information for one race, but at least right now I may continue that since it seemed to work for this tournament.
I know you're a DRF fan as well, so it is a lot of stuff to be looking at, but you were able to put it all together this weekend for the World Championship of Handicapping. Just one last question before I let you go. Are you going to try to, obviously you're going to try, but how are you feeling about your chances now that you've won your way into the NHC this weekend as well? You're going to go back to back here? Any predictions?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's, I've tried to come into those things, be relaxed. I feel really good about it. I mean, it's obviously I just won this tournament, so, but my picks were good. I wasn't distraught when I would debate between two horses and the one I picked lost and the one I didn't pick won. So it all went well. And if I can just kind of continue that approach into the NHC, I'm feeling really good about it. So which is rare. Normally I'm kind of stressed going to the NHC. So
I know you've had some success there as well. We'll talk about that. Hopefully, if there's a minute somewhere along the line where you're not too busy, I'll be co-hosting with Steve Bick at the races, the coverage that he'll be posting on the SiriusXM channel and also stevebick.com. Hopefully you can come by and see us there. And in any case, Godspeed this weekend, Frank. It was great having you on the show.
Well, thanks so much. It was a pleasure being on the show, and I look forward to seeing you at the NHC.
Cheers, my friend. Cheers. There you have it, JK, from our inaugural World Handicapping champion, I guess you could call him, Frank Polk. He played it very well. Did you have time to take a look at some of the plays he made?
Yeah, I did. We talked about it last week. I was impressed with his finding the 7 horse, the long shot. I'm sure that in the interview he named the horse.
Just now,
so there you go. And then just to get himself into that position, like you said, to keep himself within a touchdown should be rewarded, and so good for him.
Yes, that Hail Mary analogy I made the other day proved popular. The idea that people don't have as big of a problem with somebody playing a big price horse if they've sort of earned their way through a cut system and are still in the game, within one score of the game, in the analogy, in the fourth quarter. It's something I think we're going to see more of in some select events in the contest world. I wouldn't want it to become the everyday format. I think
for your sort of day in, day out racing, the 12 race, all mythical, highest score wins. I think that works. But do you think this is the cut line thing could have legs, JK?
Yeah, no, I think it does for sure. I think it does for sure. I think it'd be cool to kind of see a version of it take place in maybe some live contests. Having a cut line, and I think that's kind of cool too. To kind of prevent that one bet wins the whole thing scenario. So that would be interesting too, and I'm sure someone along the line will get the idea and try it.
How do you feel about the idea? I don't think this is a great idea for the WCH next year, but I think it's interesting for another contest format, just to brainstorm a little bit. The idea of having cut lines where your scores reset. In other words, 45 make the cut, but then the next round, as many players, but your score goes back to 0. Just curious if you're gut.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess if you look at the idea, I think was probably born from what we see in golf, right? You cut in golf, and in golf doesn't reset. What you do on Thursday and Friday counts. It's important to still give some worth to what you do. However, I am interested in the idea of who can be the best over 3 days in individual kind of settings. The only problem is that if you do it like that, where you kind of start over, then you make the last day the most day, and you make the first day not that important. And I think it's probably better to have both days be important. You know what I mean?
I hear your perspective. I think another type of tournament that could be very interesting. And I don't think I'd want it for a championship event. Don't want to give too much away here. I don't know what tournament operators listen to the program. I'm sure never steal anything or anything like that. Just, let me work that one privately. See if we can, Michael Zapin and I can get the idea that we bust out at some point on DRF tournaments. Stuff going on in the world, bunch in on DRFT. Folks should check out. We've got our first qualifier listed now for Ultimate Betting Challenge. This in March. That's going to be a contest that takes place once at Gulf Street in Santa Anita. Horse Player World Series opportunity this weekend. Of course, it's just to play in next year's WCH. Details to come, but we do know big money, and we know there won't be. So that, for me, that's all I would need to know, especially since the first opportunity to win one's way in, do it, JK, free Saturday. And that using the live format should be a fun opportunity for folks to start that journey. A little bit of tournament news as well. And Pat McKenna from Ira just this morning gave me a little scoop. Haven't even announced this yet, but they have their full schedule now listed for tournaments for 2018. And I think this is because NYRA have been a little bit, sometimes they're late announced. This tournament's happened in a couple of weeks. It's hard to build momentum. When a tournament player at the beginning of the year can say, hey, these are the dates I need to circle on my calendar. So you'll want some notes of this because I know you like to make trips up to the New York racetracks. I'm just going to run through them if you are that cool with you?
Let's do it.
All right, start with 3 at Aqueduct. Saturday, March 10th, Gotham Challenge. That's their $500 live. April 7th, they're going to come back with the Wood Memorial Challenge. Once again, that's a $500. And then in the fall, we have an Aqueduct Challenge on November 17th, $1,000 entry fee. Belmont, there's going to be 2 events similar to last year. Friday, June 8th, Saturday, June 9th. That's the Belmont Stakes Challenge. That's back, $10 entry fee. They're going to come back in July with the Stars and Stripes Challenge once again. $500 to play in that one. There's a format to be friendlier to the lower bankers. And here, I believe JK, but this one I think you're going to be psyched about. The past couple of years, the Saratoga contest has really morphed, and it's a little now. I describe it the last couple of years as like a bit neither fish nor fowl. It hasn't been what it was before, when it was this big money, middle of destination contest that people all over the country, and it hadn't quite gotten into the live bankroll, but to become like a major live bankroll contest. Sort of a hybrid here, and I think it's a big positive. The big thing they're doing is, instead of Thursday, historically, two of the worst days at Saratoga in the contest was quality of racing, they've moved to the weekend. Friday, August 10th, Saturday, August 11th. Friday, a 1,000 bank contest. This is two separate contests, which I think is good. People having two opportunities to win. And then on Saturday, Star Dave Challenge, $2,000 fee. In all cases, there's going to be seats. Especially they're looking to pump up their Vermont Stakes Challenge still, but there's a lot of good things happening in these plans. What do you think about this new version of the Saratoga contest?
I think it's great. I mean, I understand from originally when it was a mythical or win place. I don't know if it was mythical. It was always live money actually, but $10, $5.
It was real money. It was real money, but not live bankroll. The distinction I always like to make that no one else in the tournament world makes, but I still bang my head up against the wall about this. There are real money contests like that one was. In other words, you're actually making a bet, but you had to make a set wager as opposed to live bankroll where you can go all in at any time, just to clarify.
Yeah, and so, I think that at some point from a standpoint of the worth of that contest to them, probably made it hard for them to justify seating on a Friday and a Saturday at Saratoga, which we all know can be prime real estate. And so I think now that it's live money, there's a little bit more handle generated from the event. I think that they probably were able to convince the powers that be that this tournament deserves a better real estate on a better day, and kudos to them for getting that done. So I think it's going to be great to have it on a Friday and Saturday with more quality racing. And it's Saratoga. Right? Racing's good at Saratoga pretty much all the time, regardless. But it's a little bit better on the weekends.
Absolutely. And we don't have news yet on DRF's qualifiers for any of these NYRA, but I think that news will be coming down the pike, along with a lot of other news about tournaments, exciting things going to be happening in the coming weeks and months. Keep it tuned here. Check out my work in the pages of Daily Racing Form and on DRF.com for more information on that as we go forward.
Pete, should we send out the save the date? Just tease the date?
Do it. Do it. I almost did it there, and then I held back. I was like, maybe JKO. I was trying to make you jump in and say what you're about to say, so do
it. Just circle Preakness weekend and look at kayak for flights to LA. Okay?
That's all
wherever you look for travel. But plan on Southern California with a beautiful racetrack with mountains in the background, Preakness weekend. So go ahead and circle that.
You will not regret it. I like it. Big news in the horse racing world this week, JK. Out of one of your places where you like to romp with the rich and famous, Lexington, Kentucky, Keeneland announcing a partial rollback of some of the takeout raises from last year. What did you think of this announcement?
Well, let's back up a taste. I do feel like what Keeneland did, although it was disappointing, but I want to say why it was disappointing, and I also want to say why it was a little bit unfair, the negative attention that they got. One, it was disappointing because, and actually I'm going to answer both of those questions. We expect more from Keeneland because that's what Keeneland has always been to us. It's been like industry first, racing first, horses first, horse players first. It was like our all the dirty things that happen, the things that we're not comfortable with. At least Keeneland is still there, 8 weeks out of the year, and they take care of us. And so I think that people were disappointed when they did it. But I think it's important to realize is their takeout was still lower than a lot of other places' takeout. They just happened to raise it, and I think that that's part of the reason people were disappointed. However, any of you or women or men who have been in relationships, you realize that one of the hardest things to do in the world is like admit you were wrong. It's like, but if that wasn't a problem, the world would be a place if someone could just say, you know what, I screwed that up. You right, let me fix it. And it's even harder for big organizations lot of big egos to be able to swallow their pride, and we made a mistake. And so I really do take off my hat to Keeneland for listening to the horse players, listening to our request for to fix the, and they did it, and I appreciate that, and it to me it's another example of what I mentioned earlier. Like we trust in Keeneland to do the right thing, unlike some of these other organizations that are run by they're publicly traded and a lot of different other situations going on. So good for them. It's perfect. It's not going to fix the game. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And we can always be happy about people in our industry taking steps in the right direction.
I'll agree with you about the step in the direction part, but as we do sometimes on the show, as I look out my window here, here's a little tangent. I look out my window here and I see the mirage, and I see who but the Beatles in a giant billboard looking across at me. And I remember one of the things so great about the Beatles was you had two very different songwriting perspectives, the sort of, sunnier, poppier Paul McCartney stuff, which I love, and then the more cynical, biting John Lennon stuff. And while I'm not comparing this podcast to the Beatles in any way, shape, or form, I will say that sometimes JK will tend to take that sunnier view, and I have to say something at least a little bit negative. So I'm just going to play that. I'm going to put that hat on right now and just say that it's not, yes, you're right about the founding mission, but the economic reality is really what affords Keeneland the opportunity to do that. So I think it's a little weak to just completely let them off the hook as, there's somebody worse with takeout. Like, that kind of whataboutism isn't getting us anywhere. So, I think they need, not only do we expect a higher standard from Keeneland because they've always shown it, but because they're really in a position to do it because of the sales company and their economic model.
Right, but I'm just saying, if we're going to boycott Keeneland for raising their, and I'm going to butcher the numbers.
I didn't boycott. I mean, we
no, I know.
Yeah.
When I say we, I'm saying, the horse player community. If we're going to boycott Keeneland for making their exact 22% or whatever they did, well, why aren't we boycotting, Gulfstream for having it at 23.8 or whatever it is? I just find that to be like a little. I get it. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't seem totally fair to me. That's all. I
don't disagree in theory, but I will say that perhaps some of that pressure is why we got the rollbacks we did. Now, the other thing, you made a great point about the relationship and how hard it can be. Well, it's kind of funny. If you read the quote, there's a little bit of a, well, we did what we meant to do, and now we can do it this way, as opposed to being a little more, if I were crafting that quote, it would have been a little more, I don't know if contrition is the right word, but not for nothing, but just to say it, I thought that quote was a little tone deaf, if I'm being completely honest with you. And I also thought the other problem is, I don't know that they went far enough, especially when it comes to rolling back host fees and the cost of making a wager for the people who represent such a large part of the handle. But we can agree, step in the right direction, hopefully more steps in that direction to come, and kudos to them for not digging in the way that we've seen other companies do. We've seen boycotts and we've seen questionable numbers, and then we've seen them double down and raise takeouts even higher. So huge props to them, really, for not going that route that we've seen. And I don't want to sit here and bloody noses of racetracks, but you don't have to look too far to see an example of what I'm talking about. And I'm very happy that Keeneland went back in the player-friendly direction that they've always known. And I look for good things going forward. Any final thoughts on that? Yeah.
No, absolutely. Like I'm a big fan of that place. Like I said, I didn't participate. I have no problem saying I didn't really participate in the boycott. I probably handled less at Keeneland than I have in the past, but it wasn't really about that. It was more about just life focus. I was just, I've had a year of distractions and other things I've been dealing with. So I just didn't. So I don't want to act like I was part of the guys who stood up for us as horse players. But I'm glad it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I do think those guys who, I wasn't on their team either, but I do think it did. I do think it did send a message, as did just the economic reality of what somebody like a Mike Maloney or a Sean Borman are then able, professional players they're just not able to bet as much when the cost of making the wager goes up. I'd love to talk to those guys and see, how important that host fee issue is still going to be for them. But anyway, we'll follow up on this. We'll keep talking about it. The number one point is kudos to them for taking a step in the right direction, and the rest of that stuff's a little down the rabbit hole, but I know our audience appreciates it, so I figured we would go a little bit in depth there. Later in the show, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the racing going on this weekend. But first, JK, you told me a story. I don't know, for those of you who've never played in a major Las Vegas handicapping contest, I mean, for me, by far, the most fun is just all the people you get to see, just hanging out in some random bar by the elevators here at Treasure Island last night, and you look around the room and there's multiple handicapping champions hanging around, talking racing, shooting the breeze, and you just get to do such fun one-stop shopping. And you told me a story, JK, that was my favorite of the night. Little story about advantage play. I'll let you take it from there.
Oh, you liked my story better than the Jerry Bailey story that the Piper told?
I want to get that Bailey story on here so badly. And in retelling it last night, I was editing in my head. He throws in random bad words like when there's no need for them. Those would be easily cut out. But there is one thing. It's not quite the punchline, but it's so important to have the profanity. And I think it would be, like trying to play Lenny Bruce on the radio. Like it just wouldn't work as well. No. I will say this. You mentioned Preakness weekend. If that happens, there's a world in which that Sunday night after the event is over, we could do a celebratory From the Dungeon podcast after dark to be shown one time only, never archived. Let us, we could just be completely unfettered. I'm sure the Piper will play in that event Preakness weekend. Maybe we can get him to tell it then.
No, it's a remarkable story. It is a remarkable story, but you're right. There's 3 punchlines in the story, essentially, and all 3 of them contain, like my son says, a good transition into the advantage play story, the F bad word.
Oh, the Piper.
So yeah, we've obviously talked about advantage play over the last few months, and we've talked about it in a positive light and a negative light. What it is, it's just it's not cheating. It's just finding an edge and exploiting that edge within the rules. And there's a certain group of guys that I think are really good advantage players. They have a name. One of them's got a bandana. The other one complains a lot, and it's the Pick 3 boys. And I'm trying to get my son added on. I'm gonna hopefully at the bandana blessing ceremony, when I put the bandana on Christian's head as a peace offering, I'm going to ask him if he'll maybe let my son in as the Pick 4 boys. And the reason that I realize that my son is going to be an advantage player is we love going to laser tag. He loves it. And there's a laser tag place in Austin. So on the weekends, I'm not joking, we go Friday night after dinner, we go Saturday morning, and we go Sunday morning, and we play like we take our best scores and we put them up on the wall. So I have my best score on the wall. He has his best score on the wall. And so I just want him to, lesson is like, hey, just try to do better than you did last time. It doesn't matter how good you are. Just try to beat your score that you did previously. So his best score he's ever gotten was like 600. Then he got to 900. He was super happy about that. Well, we show up, and he's usually the youngest person in there playing laser tag. Well, this night we showed up. There's a young kid's birthday party. He wasn't the youngest kid, and we're sitting in the briefing room, is what they call it, where they kind of give you the rules and stuff. And we've already seen him 27 times, so we just wait. And he tells me, he's like, "Dad, I think I'm going to do really good today." and I said, "I think so too, buddy." So we go in, we play. He doubles his best score he's ever got. He gets 2,200 or something. I mean, he's never broke 1,000. He gets 2,200. He's excited as ever. He can't. So we go out, we get our scorecards, and on the scorecards you can see who you've shot. In laser, you can see who you shot, and you can see how many times. I mean, the most I've ever shot anyone is like 18 times, right? Like just some guy that just stands in the corner, and every time I look up, I get him. Like 18 times is the most. I look at Austin's scorecard. He shot a player by the name of Spider-Man 42 times. All he did was follow around this poor 4-year-old and just continue to shoot him and shoot him and shoot him. And he shot him 42 times. And I cried. Somewhere in the world, Kevin McFarland and Nissan are crying a tear of joy that there's a young advantage player in the making. And I know the guys said they don't want to talk to me, but I'm going to try to catch him to see if they'll let Austin in and upgrade from the pick 3 boys to the pick 4 boys. I was proud of him as well.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. And a lesson about the other horse racing lesson, other than the one that you took out of it, is game selection, man. I'm telling you, you got to be careful what pools you play in, what contests you choose to play in online. When you can find that situation where the odds are in your favor. Though it does make me think that Austin, his future might be on the felt in the poker table, where you can sort of, do that sort of complete weak link exploitation. Doesn't quite have full horse racing applications, does it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, honestly, I was just proud. I just think that like life's about trying to find an edge, right? And it's a lot of things. It's an edge in your personality or in your career or whatever it is, and a shortcut to work, and so it's proof of critical thinking to me. I know I joke about the pick 6 boys. I think they're talented horse players and they're smart guys, advantage players. I think we probably have some personality differences, and that's why I joke.
You think?
Yeah, but no. I mean, I really don't think anything's wrong with it. I think it's a evidence of critical thinking, higher level critical thinking.
Does Austin play cards at all? Because I think that'd be an interesting laboratory for the skill set he seems to be developing there.
No, we just play a lot. I was a video game guy growing up, and we're doing that. We're playing a lot of games and stuff. We play a lot of those Lego Marvel games where it's kind of an adventure game, but it's got a little Legend of Zelda to it where you have to see that rock over there and move that rock so you can get into that door, that type of deal. And so I really do think it challenges him to think about stuff. And he's done some really cool things there with like, hey, Dad, why don't we switch to Hulk? Because then we can do this. And so he doesn't play cards yet, but that's kind of his version of what we're doing.
The same idea. I've been messing around with playing with Perrin tic-tac-toe. Seems like a good way to sort of start, just anticipating somebody else's moves, thinking ahead, that kind of critical thinking. Just in my long range plan. She already loves the track, but obviously we're not quite at handicapping yet. But I figured tic tac toe. That's the first step on a long journey. We'll see how it works out. Do we want to talk races? Did we have any other things we want to talk about? Anything going on here at Treasure Island this weekend to talk about quickly? Any other stories from last night? Or is it time to start talking to horses?
Yeah, they were good. I think look, the stakes races are not the most contentious. I feel I'm the pick 3 I gave out on out of the gate at Santa Anita has 2 combinations. So
wow.
It's a straightforward day in my opinion. But we'll see. Yeah,
we can let that speak for itself if you want. Did you look at anything coming up at Gulfstream this weekend?
Yeah, I looked at the Grade 1, the Gulfstream Park turf. I don't know what the price is going to be. The morning lines aren't up yet, and I'd imagine he's going to be pretty short. But I've always thought Heart to Heart could be potentially be good going longer because although he's usually forward, he's not usually like ranked. He settles pretty well. He's getting Julian back up. He's run 1 mile and 1/8 on the turf 3 times. Once he got 3rd, and the other 2 he won. I think he could be dangerous going 1 mile and 1/8, especially in these races where a lot of these horses don't have a lot of speed. The other horse that projects to have some speed is Todd, and is Chad with Kurlov, who is trying turf for the first time in America, who has been forwardly placed but has Irad Ortiz, and it feels like to me that when Chad's trying to get a horse to turf, it's more of they work in company, and I don't see this horse blasting off and running with Heart to Heart. I think Heart to Heart's going to be pretty tough in this spot. I just don't think he's going to be much of a price, but definitely one that if you're playing multi-race situations, I would try to get cute and single there.
Always a horse I've liked, and you're absolutely right. Going longer, that speed can even be more deadly, assuming the horse can, see out the trip. But not a lot to do there. Not one who'll be attracting a lot of contest attention, I wouldn't think. If you had to try to grab a longer price in there? Is there gun to your head? Where would you go?
Yeah, it's just tricky, because Chad's got, I don't know, 2, 3. Those horses will take money, which is good. I guess one of the horses that I would take a look at would be March. Ran well for Jonathan Thomas, and we obviously are big fans of Jonathan Thomas and what he's doing. And he's got another big horse. I guess it's his big horse right now, Catholic Boy, running a few hundred miles up north at Tampa. But I think March is interesting. He started off his career on the dirt, was a kind of a one-turn dirt type, and then Chad switched him to the turf and never got him to win. But obviously, if Chad puts a horse on the turf, there must be something there. So Jonathan Thomas could move this horse up, gets Tyler Gaffalione to riding the turf well, and second off a layoff. I guess that would be the one I would try to get cute with, but I think Heart to Heart's going to be tough.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's go ahead and stay in Florida, unless you had another thing you wanted to mention at Gulfstream quickly. I say we just go ahead and talk about the Tampa Bay Derby and the return to the races of Catholic Boy, who's been a favorite on this show and a horse that many listeners and we have been fortunate to cash on a few times. Yeah,
the Tampa Bay Derby prep. You got to put money in the mistake jar.
Oh, the mistake. Sam F. Davis. It's the Sam F. Davis. I just obliterated 2 months of life there and went right to the Tampa Bay Derby.
You're excited.
It's a Tampa Bay. I like Catholic Boy. Anyway, Sam F. Davis. Thank you.
Yeah, look, Catholic Boy is the one you're supposed to probably think is the most likely winner here. However, this is the type of race where, he's already kind of established himself as a horse that can go longer. He's established himself as a classy type. Something tells me when Jonathan Thomas and Mr. LaPinta sat down and mapped out an attack, they didn't say, and you know what? When we run him on Saturday, February 10th in the Sam F. Davis going a mile and a 16th, he is going to be cranked up. It feels like this is a prep going on. They're gonna lead in so that he can run his best race the first Saturday in May, and so I'm gonna try to beat him here. I'm gonna use 3 horses in multi-race situations. I'm gonna use Septimius Severus for George Weaver. Jose comes up for the day, stretching from 7 to a mile and a 16th. I think George Weaver is an extremely underrated trainer. I think that this horse could be going in the right directions. Hollywood Star, who was, if I'm not mistaken, was entered last weekend at Gulfstream, but scratched, has been working well, was working with Free Drop Billy leading into that race. Hollywood Star, well-bred horse for Dale Romans is another one that I think could be a possibility at a little bit of an upset price. And then Vouch, who I think we both agreed and took in the Remsen. Maybe you were Catholic Boy that day, but Vouch ran third that day to Avery Island and Catholic Boy, both of which are stakes winners. Avery Island recently last week in the Withers, and then Catholic Boy obviously in the fall in the Remsen. So I think Vouch is one that I'll give another shot. So I'm going to try to hook up one of those 3 horses and try to make some money beating Catholic Boy. But Catholic Boy is probably the one you want moving forward out of this race.
That all makes sense. Yeah, I did like Catholic Boy that day, but I do remember I think you had made the compelling case for Vouch, and I was interested for purposes as I recall it. Haven't had a chance to dive into the Sam F. Davis yet, but I will do that. We need a sound effect. We got to get from producer Craig. We got to get a sound effect for the money going in the mistake jar. I think that would be a good. I think that would be a good one to add to the list. We're very light on. We have our great intro, and then we have very little sound on this podcast. We might need to start doing that and tallying it up and having this money to spend on boozy milkshakes at Shake Shack bar this summer. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Or we could, you know what else we could do is once it reaches a certain point, this is a production meeting in the middle of the show.
We like to have those on.
We could bet it in a multi-race bet and then make a donation if we, make a donation off of that bet to a charity. We could come up with a racing charity. Yeah. Obviously we got to hit the big bet, but I guess some people would say just donate the 100, but let's bet the 100, try to make it 1,000 and donate the 1,000.
Producer Craig says we should make the donation to his pocket, but I think we'll skip. I think we'll skip that one. He's Craig. We're all going to be working for you one day anyway, so you're just going to have to wait to achieve to achieve your fame and riches.
I got to keep my eye on Craig. He's making me nervous. He sent me a he sent me an audio clip yesterday of like a disclaimer saying that he's going to play before the podcast, warning people that I might.
Oh, that was on that 2 weeks ago. That was on the episode.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. That's some of the.
Oh, he must have put it in afterwards.
Yeah, he dropped it in after the fact. I was thinking of putting it on to every show, but I think that might be, potty mouth shaming, which I'm not sure is acceptable in our culture. So we're going to probably skip putting it on every show.
Yeah, now he's working on an outtake thing of me having to restart my out of the gate clips. I usually am not I don't have to start too many times, but sometimes I get tongue tied at the beginning when I'm trying to find my groove, and so I have to start over. And then I bang on my head and say crazy things.
He was letting us know that we're not the only ones who have to do that. Some of the A-list talent here at DRF have their own little nuances, singing before the taping and various pre-taping grumpiness that someday may just see the light of day. So all the DRF talent would be nice to correct. Did you hear that Matt Bernier has a rider when he does his show? He needs M&Ms, but he only wants the brown ones. TV's Matt Bernier. He's still he may be not on quite as many national broadcasts, but he'll always be TV's Matt Bernier to me. And the guy's a real diva. He should have his M&Ms any way he likes them, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, we're doing that little funny thing here. Since we're out in Vegas, this big contest begins tomorrow. We're pretending the show is live, but it's actually being recorded on Thursday afternoon. So that means by the time you hear this, the book signing I'm about to plug will have happened. But I will say this: if you happen to be in Vegas this weekend and you're looking for a signed copy of Betting with an Edge, I will have some extras around. You will see me. I will be sitting with Steve Bick, obviously, be a little smart about it. If I'm yapping on the air, I can't be pulling out a book and signing it or whatever. But you'll find some opportunity to button hook me and get a signed copy of Betting with an Edge. Mike will be around too, depending on how he's doing in the contest. I'm sure he would like to say hi. He was down at the bar last night talking to it was really cool. It was gratifying. A bunch of people who'd read the book and had nice things to say, and there was also some very nice chatter on Twitter about it. Have you read the whole thing? I haven't read the last two chapters. It's where I need to. That's like a collapse. Speaking of things in relationships, when you ask somebody a question and you get that exact level of pause that JK just put right there, that is the human lie detector. The human lie detector is on 11 right now, folks. No, I told you. I seriously, I just haven't read the last two chapters, which I think are the ones about Mike's foray into trying to get some problems fixed and the roadblocks he ran into. That is the last chapter. Have you heard the one story I want to get told on here is the bookie story. We had a great time yesterday. We actually made it over to that Black Tap burger, which lived up to the hype. I haven't been to the one in New York, but this was a perfectly cooked burger. Sean Borman had a milkshake that was looked like something out of this world. Like if Willy Wonka had made a milkshake, it was crazy. His wife mocked him for not being able to finish it, which I loved. But we were telling some fun bookie stories sitting around the table, and it occurred to me that maybe have you read the bookie story in the book? I have. I do, and I had to ask Mike yesterday. I'm like, did you tell me that story, or did I read it? That's pretty fun. I forget, but yeah, no, it is a good one. When we get him back on here, when we need another tale from the track from him, we'll throw that on there. We also had the pleasure yesterday of going over to the South Point for a little while and sitting down with Gil Alexander and talking WCH and NHC and a little bit about the book. And then Mike was loving afterwards picking Gil's brain and his producer Jorge's brain about sports betting. And it was really interesting to see how quickly they found common ground talking about the issues that face sports bettors and horse players. That was a lot of fun. I'm not sure if all those shows are archived, but you could take a look. That would have been Wednesday of this week. And Gil's podcast, Beating the Book, it's a must listen. And the show he does on VSiN 5 days a week is terrific. And you can watch and listen to that live. Really professional and fun setup they have over there at the South Point. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, Jonathan, is have you looked, this tournament this weekend, the NHC here at Treasure Island where we are right now, the only tournament I know of where you can bet on a horse player to win a tournament. You can bet on yourself. Have you looked into this at all?
Yeah, I was going to bet on Mike. He has 2 entries, but he said he said he would book the bet, so he's not feeling very confident. So, yeah, no, it's fun. I remember the first year I came out here. It was really fun to be able to do that and keep that souvenir ticket. And I'm sure most people have heard the legend, and it is true that 2 years ago when Paul Matisse won, the NCRA gives a gift. Typically, it's been different things, but one of the things that's kind of always been is like a chip or a betting voucher or whatever. And so, and 2 years ago when Paul won the NHC, he had bet $100 on himself. So not only did he win the $800,000, he also hit a $100 100-to-1 bet on himself, which he affectionately let us all know that he used that $10,000 to tip and pay for his celebration dinner.
So cool. Yeah, that extra 10 dimes was of the 810,000 he won. I'll bet you that 10,000 was the sweetest bit of that money for a guy like him. Great to be seeing him around and yapping with him in the TI Sportsbook yesterday. Our friend Blake wanted to know if we have the complete odds to win on this wager. Do you have a sheet with it that we could read or anything?
I don't. They have them in the sportsbook. Someone, people always like to joke and tell you what you are or whatever, but it's in the sportsbook. You can get it. We can try to find one, grab one, and post it. Last time I looked, I think Duke might have been the favorite, like 25-1. I don't know if that's changed or not, but
interesting.
It's tricky, right? I mean, it's really funny and it's cool, but like if someone bets $20, it changes. It's a very, very small pool of money. So if someone bets $20 on someone, it can change pretty drastically.
I saw Joe Corey make a bet yesterday that I would have made, and then I just assumed the price was gone and didn't go back up and do it. But he got 8-1 on the field, and they let him have $100. Not knowing exactly who's where, but just knowing how the process works, unless it's changed. It used to be that everyone who qualified past a certain date, and not that recent of a date, was in the field, as well as all the late that's how that worked. So you'd end up just numerically having whatever, a sixth of the field at 8-1. I mean, that's a bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And and also I think it's obviously the last chance qualifiers, and then the guys that qualify with the tour people, the 150 point or the 150
who are some of the best players, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, I think it's a definitely good bet.
I'm going to go down there and see. That's the good thing about this podcast not being live. Nobody can beat me to the punch. I'll go down there and see if I can get another 100 on. Hey, JK, can I borrow 100?
Yeah, you're going to have to ask the roulette table for that 100 back if you need it.
Wait a second. I thought you hit your famous black action bet. For those who don't know, JK, every time he enters Vegas for the first time, does the $100 black action bet. When he wins, it's going to be a huge weekend. When he loses, not so much. And you told me it was a winner.
Well, it was a winner.
But what happened?
The next one was.
What the next one? Oh, I can't. I can't even go there.
Look, this is what I do. I have 5 numbers. I have the 2, the 22, the 10, the 13, and the 11. My son's birthday is 10, 13, 11. 2 and 22 are just old numbers from like sports. So when I walk by a roulette table, if 5 of my numbers, it doesn't have to be separate 5, but just 5 are present on the board, then I make a joke that roulette table likes me, and I just make a walk-by action bet. And I do that when I'm in Vegas, and it ends up being I end up breaking even at the end of the day. I win some, I lose some, I win some, I lose some, I win some, whatever. Just a fun thing to do, and I'm walking by. It gives me something to do because I don't really play any other table games.
You break even, I'm sure, with that brilliant strategy.
It is 47% of the time I'm right.
I'll book the PTF Sportsbook. We'll book your roulette action, and we'll also book you in this tournament this weekend. What price are you?
I don't know. I think the last I heard was like 40-1, but
yeah, that's a leg. No offense.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Hey, at least I had the guts that year when somebody who was feeling himself a little too much, who wasn't qualified for the tournament, said, "What price am I to finish ahead of Jonathan? You had 2 entries. It must have been the year after all the hype when you had the 2 in the top 10. What price am I with no entry yet, but the last chance yet to come to finish ahead of JK? I booked that bet at 100 to 1. Basically, I took $1. I guess it was $10 to risk 1,000 or something that you would beat the man, and it was the easiest $10 I ever ever won. So
unfortunately, he's got some accolades, but he can't warm me up.
Oh my goodness! We're just gonna let that one. You're so salty today.
I know what's going on with me. It's just.
You rank.
No, it's just funny. It's funny. We joked about it. And I don't know if we said it. We joked about it off the air. But it's like, I don't know why these people want to get into Twitter spats with me. I got an hour-long podcast to explain myself and you know.
And sometimes when your lazy co-host hasn't looked at the races and we end up with 10 minutes to fill at the end of the show, you just get to air all our grievances. All right, that's it. We've had enough of this edition of the DRF Players Podcast. I want to thank Jonathan Kitchen. I want to thank Frank Polk. I want to thank Willie Nile for providing our theme song and Travis Stone for his great voiceover. Speaking of Willie, if you want more of his music, check out willienile.com. Thanks to AJ and Craig as well. We will be back on Tuesday, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, hopefully I'm $800,000 richer.
We'll be reviewing a little bit of what happened out here in Las Vegas. We'll be talking about all the racing, answering questions as well. Hit us up at Looms Boldly and at UT Big Hair on Twitter. I'll let you guess which one is which. And you can also get us at podcast@drf.com. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.